Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of an artsy crafty kind of video, which is a little different than what I normally do in this channel, but alas, it's something that I wanted to present to you guys. Now, my brother Nick is a big time cosplay guy. He goes to all the anime conventions, AnimeNEXT. He went to the Hudson Valley Comic Con, which was just a recent one we had here in the Hudson Valley. He's been all over. He's also into the Renfaire stuff. He actually had a summer job at the last two Renfaires here in New York. Then he decided to go to Texas and do some stuff with them down there in Texas. Anyway, he's big into that stuff, and one of the things he likes to do is make his own costumes, as you tend to do when you go cosplaying. Now, what is cosplaying? Cosplaying is a little bit of play on words, is costume and play and role play, and you get the idea. It's kind of a costume role playing kind of thing, and particularly a lot of the cosplayers do a lot of Japanese animation stuff or anime or whatever you want to call it. He does have some anime stuff that he's done, but he also does things like he just did Red Hood, which is part of the Batman universe, if I remember correctly. The two costumes he's working on now is Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, iteration of him, and Deathstroke. So there's an event coming up this June. I think it's June 11th, or the weekend of June 11th. It's down in Atlantic City, and it's one of the anime conventions. I don't really remember which one, honestly, because I don't really go to them. That's not my game. But I do respect the people that do that kind of stuff, and my brother, being the artistic, creative kind of guy, it's very mind-blowing to see him do this kind of stuff, especially when designing it is definitely hard to do. There's a lot of trial by error, I'll call it, stuff that you have to do, especially when you're using your own body as a template. But that being said, his skills have definitely improved over the years of him doing this, and hopefully with a little bit of positive reinforcement, he'll be making, you know, costumes for people for money, which would be great. But he's done some really nice stuff. But anyway, he was over here yesterday, and I helped him make some of these costumes, and all I had to do was just take a template and trace it out on the foam and cut it out with a knife, and then he's going to do the rest of the processes at home. But the grunt work is the designing of it, and then the actual cutting of the foam. And he will argue with me and say the cutting of the foam is one of the hardest parts. I say it's the design, but either way. So he's going to have a lot to do with the two different costumes he's designing. He has all the bits and pieces. I did actually record footage from it, but it wasn't direct, like here's what I'm doing, talking to the camera stuff. I just kind of left the camera on the tripod and just let it record for the whole day he was here. So I have hours and hours of footage, and I let the mic run, and we had music playing in the background, and you know, just laughing, talking about some stuff. So that's probably going to be cut out of the video, and it's maybe shortened down into some kind of a time-lapse thing, just to show the process of making it. And it may be a multi-part thing if I can get the camera to him when he finishes it up. That may happen, but he is a bit camera shy, so I don't think he'll be part of it. But anyway, I wanted to show what he did. So now, where do I come into all this? Well, one of the things that happened yesterday is he decided one of the characters needed to have a gun made for it. In fact, actually, he wanted to make, you know, I think it was the Deathstroke character. He wanted to make a larger, you know, rifle, shotgun, something like that, and then he wanted to make a single pistol style gun. Actually, I think he wanted to do two pistols so he could do dual wielding, and he already had like holsters, and he bought all these different bits to the costume. So we started looking around online, getting some ideas, and being that he's artistic, he started to, you know, just kind of sketch out what he thought the gun would look like, and then we were going to cut that sketch out. And he based it on his hand so you can get a good feel on it. And the problem is my brother's never actually held a real pistol in his hand before, so it's kind of hard, and I don't have one, so I can't just hand him one and say here's what it looks like. So we kind of had to do some creative tinkering. And well, one of the things I came up with was just to Google gun template. I mean, it was pretty easy. So I came up with this, and you may make out my little note here. When I printed this, I printed it right out of Paintbrush, and it's not a vectored image, because if you zoom in, you can see it's kind of pixelated. But that's fine, because this is going to get cut out, so we don't really care how clean it is. We just want it to be representative of an actual gun. But as you can see from my hand, it's a little too big. It needs to be scaled. And this was printed at the fit the page setting that Paint would print it as. So we thought, well, that's no good. Well, let's see what the original size of the picture is. Maybe that would help us. So then I printed it at original size, which would be this guy. And obviously you can see that's a little too small. And he's got a little bit of a bigger hand than I do. So it's just, it wouldn't look right for scale. So then I figured we'll take the original size and we'll blow it up. And instead of it being 100%, which is what this is, we'll do 125%. And that led us to this one. Now this is pretty darn close. I mean, that's right where we would want it to be, I would imagine. So I decided to take this and I printed it out and I used a stick of glue and I stuck it to some really thin cardboard, and I came up with this, which is just a cutout version of it. And of course you can hold it in your hand and you could see, of course it's just a piece of paper, but you could see it does look pretty legitimate. In fact, I joked around and says, why don't you just make something like this and that would work. And as you can see, I just mirrored the image and cut it out just to give you that 3D, 2D kind of effect, which was neat. But this was a good way just to like visualize and see if this is actually going to indeed hold into your hand and actually look like it's a real gun, which it does. Now the thing about cosplay, and depends on what convention you go to, you have to be careful about weapons because they don't want them to look too realistic. You're not going to make a samurai and make it out of real steel. You're not going to buy real weapons because that would be kind of stupid. So it's going to be representative of a gun, but it can't look too real. That's one of the stipulations. So after I got this done, we kind of joked around and said, hey, you should build one, I should build one, and then we'll compare notes next weekend at some point and see whose was the better gun. Now I can tell you hands down he's probably going to have the better gun. But as I was sitting here cutting out all the foam and doing all the tracing, I said, I bet you I can make a pretty darn good one too. So where are we at? Well, we got the template, we got the idea, and we got a mock-up. Well, there's a problem with the mock-up. If you know anything about guns, you know that the eject section here where the brass shell would come flying out after you pull the trigger, and by the way, this slides back and forth every time that happens. Now this isn't going to be a gun video because I'm not a gun aficionado or anything, but I do know a thing or two. There's no eject on the other side, so this image has to be corrected to reflect that. And also when I carve out the pieces of the foam, I want it to look kind of functional but not. So that's a couple, you know, one of the things. Plus there's little things like the hammer, the sights, they're not going to be as thick as the whole gun. So there are some things that, you know, I had to take into consideration. So what I did was I opened up Paint and I made a new template. Now this is just the outside cut line, and this would be for the right facing side of the gun. So this is, when you hold it in your right hand, this is the side you're going to see on the right. So I left the area where the grip is because I'm going to actually roughen that out with a Dremel or something. I removed the hammer and the sights. Obviously I removed the detail work in the barrel and the slide section, and I removed the scales or the handle, whatever you want to call it, and also the clip. So this is going to be this actual side of the gun. The other side of the gun, as you can see, has the whole eject section just straightened out, so it's going to look smooth on this side. Also, I made a little note, and it was on the other side too, that the front's going to get hollowed out, and I'll show you why in just a moment. And then we have the midsection. Now the midsection, I have the hammer, I have the clip piece, the opening for the eject's slightly different, and the front and rear sights are on the gun, and also the trigger's present. Now if I can do this right, I should be able to take the two images and superimpose them here a little bit, and you can see where that trigger lines up. So that's going to be a little thinner in here, but the trigger guard, the rest of the gun's going to be still just as thick everywhere else. And also you'll see it's a little different up here. You can see the hammer. Luckily I do have a good enough of a light behind here, so this does work pretty well. And if I wanted to, I could actually take the other side of the gun and line it up like that, so you get all three sides. So if you flip it over, this is a really great way to visualize this before you actually do any work on it. And then of course we have the actual scales, because these are going to get cut out with different foam. And even the same thing with that, some of them have a little differences between it just to give it, you know, less symmetry. So what do I have to do? Well, we need to make a stiff template like this, which was just, like I said, piece of paper glued right to cardboard. Well, luckily my brother works in a warehouse, so he came over with a big roll of this slip sheet material, and this is what they use when they make pallets to slip between the products at certain levels, or they may even put it down the bottom. Now it's, you know, it's got some dirt on it, it's been probably trampled on the warehouse floor. That's fine. This isn't going to be part of the production piece. What we'll do is we'll take each one of these components here and cut them out and glue them right to here. I'll probably just glue the sheet of paper right to it, and then I'll just cut the shapes out of this. I do have to do a little fold work on here just to get the curvature out of it, but that's not a big deal. And then we're going to take foam. Now this foam is the kind of stuff that you use to make your floor tiles out of, and you can see we've already used this. You get, I think, 4 of these in a pack. You get some at Harbor Freight. I think they sell them in Lowe's. Probably a bunch of other places you can get them at. And they come in sets of 4, like I said, and they interlock. So you would, you know, puzzle piece the 4 pieces together, and you can make like a shop floor, garage floor kind of idea. But once we get the templates cut out of the actual cardboard, we're going to lay them up here and trace them out with a marker. I have a fine marker or fat marker, either way, and then we're going to use a standard razor knife, and we're going to push down in here and cut. And the one important thing about cutting, and I kind of learned this yesterday, and Nick reminded me about it, and I kind of forgot. When you cut this, you got to make sure you cut straight through. You don't want to angle either way, which is easy to do, because what happens is when you angle like that, you cause like a chamfering effect, and you don't get a straight cut. And at some point, this has to get smoothed and cleaned up with a Dremel, or sanded with some kind of a sanding device. And you don't always want a curved surface like that. For example, one of the pieces he made was like a round kneecap, and when it sands, he wants it to be sanded, like rounded out on the outside. So if you had a chamfered edge like that, it's not a problem. But one of the pieces he made was for the shredder mask, which is the mouth guard that goes across the front of your face, and it's several pieces that are going to get heat treated, so this actually becomes really pliable in heat. And what he's going to do is he's going to take those pieces and kind of just warp them and round them out, and those pieces, if they're not exactly straight when you butt them together, you don't have a good working surface to bond them to, and that's important. So that's definitely one thing to note. I need to cut 3 sections. There's definitely enough foam in this to cut the 3 sections out for sure, and it all depends on how you lay this on here. Try to get the most material out of the foam. The other pieces he gave me are these craft foam. You might have got this in like AC Moore, Michaels, one of your standard, you know, places, and I'm sure they come in packs. Now the color doesn't matter, it's gonna be painted, but this is what the scales are gonna be cut out of. And once we have the templates done, everything marked up, the foam cut out, we have Mod Podge. No, it's not sour cream. He just left me some Mod Podge, which is kind of like Elmer's glue. It's pretty much just a latex coating. It stinks too, but that's a glue sealant kind of concoction here, and we have a foam brush. So what we'll do is we'll take the piece once it's done, and we'll cover it with this Mod Podge, and that will seal in any of those little fine holes and stuff like that, and it will also allow it to be paintable. That's an important process. Now he uses hot glue gun, which I have one, of course, and he uses the hot glue gun and puts the glue on each segment and then puts them together, and then I think he either clamps it or puts a book on or something just to hold them together until the glue dries. I'm going to try using the Mod Podge or spray adhesive or some kind of other adhesive to get the 3 pieces to line up, just because I want to try it, not because I doubt his technique. His technique is definitely something he's been working on for a little while now, and he is mastering it, but I want to try something else too, just to just to give it another idea. I mean, ultimately, if it doesn't work, I go to the hot glue method. But hot glue ultimately will be used in some spots in this. We cut a piece of scrap pipe that I had. I think this is just PEX pipe. I just used one of those like nippy cutters, and we just cut a little section out of it. And this will be cut and trimmed and used to represent the little cover here. Not a gun guy, so I don't really know what you call it, but this is the little cover in here that slides back, like part of the bolt, I guess. I don't really know, but this slides back and allows the brass shell to come flying out, and then it would slam forward with the next bullet, so you bang, 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 bang. There is definitely a little thing there, if I remember correctly, so this is what that's going to be. I have looked at some 3D models of some pistols online to kind of give us an idea. One of the other pieces, unfortunately, I'll have right here in front of me, is this plumbing piece that we picked up at Lowe's last night when we went to pick up paint and stuff. This is a CPVC adapter part. He just picked it up and said it looked like it would work for what he needs it to, and we grabbed 2 of them. And last night I just hit it up with a couple quick coats, I should mention, of the Valspar brand Primer Plus paint that Lowe's sells. And I don't remember what color orange this was, but this is actually going to serve as the little tip that's going to stick out the end of the gun here to make it look like it's an actual fake gun, which is what we want. It's kind of, I think, a requirement. This piece had a little rubber washer on it, which it's off camera, but it's not important, and that just sat around the edge here. And this was, I think, used to adapt 2 different sizes of pipe together somehow. You can see one end is not as painted as well as the other, because this is going to be the working piece that you're going to see. That little ring around the outside there is just going to stick right outside the gun, just to give it a little bit more detail, I guess you could say. So that's the gist of it right now. So what I'm going to do is do the grunt work of cutting out the 3 pieces we need here: the front, middle, left, right, middle, and the scales. We're going to cut that out after I glue it to the paper, and I'll show you some of the process involved in that. I guess it's not terribly boring. I'm working on getting video editing software that's far better than what came with this camera, and it should have the ability to do time-lapse stuff, so I should be able to do one of those little quick montages, like a minute worth of me doing all this stuff eventually. But for now, we'll just show some of the bits and pieces of it, so it's not terribly boring. All right, I went ahead and took the pieces of paper with the templates on it, and I just kind of loosely cut around it, just so I don't have the bulk of the paper around there. And this will allow me to kind of fit these better on here, just so I can utilize as much paper, cardboard as I can, I should say. That way I can keep the rest of it for another project, and I'm not wasting too many materials. And the best part is this is scrap to begin with. So I'm going to lay those out like that, and I'm going to glue them down. And this is just regular, standard, good old-fashioned Elmer's glue stick. You know, I just luckily had one of these lying around, believe it or not. But I'm just going to go ahead, apply a good amount of glue to this entire section, just overlap really well, glue these down. It dries really quick. And I'm going to go through the arduous process of cutting them out, and every little detail has to get translated as best as possible. Well, we got everything cut out now. I'll mention before I show you that, if you can't see already, unfortunately, my cat decided to jump on my desk and start clawing at the piece of foam that we have to cut out to make these pieces. And yeah, unfortunately, it's it's kind of bad. They're pretty deep, and I can't really do anything with them. I mean, some of them I can kind of push back down into position there, the little chunks that he kind of dug out, but ultimately I really just can't use this section here, which is very unfortunate. It's one of those things, it's my fault. You know, I saw him go after this the other night, and I threw it in the closet so he wouldn't get to it, and now that I'm doing this video and the actual project, I took the thing out and have it here on my desk, and well, you get the idea. Unfortunately, I stepped away from the project for a good 5 minutes to start making dinner, and that's when I heard the ruckus in here. But alas, it's my own fault. I can't blame the cat. He's just doing his instinctual thing. So anyway, now we have the pieces to this gun here. Now this is the kind of better mock-up than what we were using before. In fact, I'll even throw the one of the scales on here. So actually this one goes here. So see, this is the hand grip. Obviously the other one goes here on the other side. You can see how the little trigger cutout exists here. You can see how the little eject section is. You can see up here and up here the sights. They just stick out a little proud of the top, the hammer, and the clip down here at the bottom. I'll get the scales out of the way for simplicity, and you get the idea. And like I said, there are 3 different pieces here, so there will be 3 different sizes. So now it's going to be a matter of cutting the foam out, and we're going to have to figure out how to get these pieces on here as best as possible without worrying about that now unusable area. And that looks like that'll work. I could probably put one of the scales here, and the other one unfortunately fell on the floor, but I could probably put that one there. And that's going to get me to the end result. I'm trying to use as much of this foam as possible. Actually, I should say the scales aren't going on here. They're going on here. So, and this was actually on top of there, so I have to inspect it to make sure there's no holes in this either. That's probably how it's going to go. One of the things I try to do with these foam pieces here is whenever there's a straight edge, I try to just like line it up on the edge. That's just one last piece you have to cut. With these complex shapes here, it's a little harder. I mean, I can kind of get this up on top as close as I can, but ultimately you can see there's a little cutout right here, and that's basically the spot where the eject section begins. I don't have a hot knife or anything else better to cut this with other than that razor knife that I showed in the beginning of the video. So when you get into the intricate areas, this tends to be a little hard to use, and I'm kind of dreading the thinness of this actual trigger guard here. That's going to be the fun part. So this is a trial by error kind of procedure, and I may get to certain areas of this and find that the template that I have isn't going to necessarily work that well, so I might have to kind of do a little hodgepodge here and maybe cut this a little larger or whatever the story is going to be. But we'll cross that bridge once we get to it. The first thing we have to do is mark this out. I do have a little tin here, which, by the way, if you ever want, you can just take a soda can or beer can or anything like that and just use a can opener along the edge here, and if you do it right, you could just have it punch that middle top piece right out, and you can make yourself a nice little can holder, you know, pen holder. But anyway, I'm trying to use these fine tipped pens from Sharpie here because it makes for a nicer trace basically. But obviously if you don't have that, you could just use the standard tip or whatever you have. You know, it's one of those smoke them if you got them kind of situations, as I hear some of my favorite YouTubers say. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and trace that out. Like I mentioned, I also have dinner going on at the same time, so this is kind of a in and out of the house process since dinner is in the grill. And yeah, so I'm gonna work on this as I can get to it, and we'll see when I have this cut out. Well, as you can see here, we got all the templates traced out onto the foam, as well as the smaller piece here. You can see I went with the red marker since that's the one that has the most ink left in it, and came up the clearest and also wrote the best. When I was doing this last night, I was using a blue marker, which showed up just as well. Now, this particular foam can be just cut out with scissors. I just have a pair of these older kitchen shears here, which I'm going to use. That's pretty self-explanatory. The foam, I'm going to use, again, my sharp knife with a new blade in it. And I also have an X-Acto knife, or X-Acto-ish knife. This one's actually a Cobalt brand, but it has a brand new blade in it. And I'm going to use that to get into the finer, intricate areas. Now, I don't have it within grabbing distance right now. I'm not going to get up to get it until I'm ready for it, but I have a old bulletin board, whiteboard combination that I'm going to lay down face down and use the back of it to keep my blade here from digging into my table. That's definitely a good idea to do, because we want to try to cut through this in one solid go. We don't have to get a jagged edge here. You can see when I first started doing this, we got this jagged edge here, and we'll avoid getting that jagged edge by making a clean cut. Also, I didn't point out, but the back side of this has this anti-slip grip thing going on here. We don't want this. This is a hindrance, because these little ridges don't give you a lot of surface area for the glue to adhere to, and you want this to be smooth. So at some point after these pieces get cut out, I'm gonna have to smooth it. Now, I did engineer this so the facing sides, the parts that are going to face outward, are on the smoother side here. You can see my silly cat's damage over here. I managed to put the templates around it and just not use that area. Yeah, like I said, that was my fault. I shouldn't have left the thing out. I can't be mad at the cat. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut these out and cut those out, and I shall be right back. I got all the pieces cut, but now that I have them out and I can play with this a little bit, I kind of have an idea that this is going to be a little too thick. Now, I know my brother has made plenty of these before with 3 thickness, and again, he has bigger hands than I do. So I figured maybe 2 would be enough, because two fits in the hand just right. 3 is a little thick. What I did do was I put a notch in the top here, and that's for the muzzle, or end of the barrel, or whatever we're going to call that here, to fit into, and there's a little bit of extra space. Now, I may utilize that for something, I'm not sure. I have an idea what I want to do with this, but he told me he wanted to keep it simple and didn't want any like laser pointers or lights or anything like that on it. I want to make it look pretty badass, but he doesn't want it too complicated, so I might just leave it as is. But I was thinking it would be kind of cool to have something in there that when you put your finger on the trigger, it would simulate like you were firing, and it would just like light up or something at the end, like a little red LED in there or something. Not that you really get a flash out of a gun like that, but you get the idea. It would just give it effect, I guess. Or you can cosplay by aiming at somebody and pulling the trigger, pew pew, whatever. I might not do that. It was just an idea. But anyway, you can see here one side of this is scalloped out, one's completely cut out. The other side too is also scalloped out. I just ran the blade back and forth a bunch of times. Oh, I should mention I use the X-Acto blade exclusively. Last time it really put a lot of pain in my wrist to try to push down this. I had to stand up, and you can see all the score marks. And I did do one cut here with it, you can see right here, and the rest of them were cut with the X-Acto knife in like a sawing motion, just straight through it. That definitely worked a lot better. I'll have to let Nick know that. Maybe he's tried that before, and everyone has their own method when doing this. One thing about the thickness, I will point out that, like I said, this still has to be sanded, and there's 3 different surfaces here that have to have that treatment done to it. So that's going to definitely take some of the thickness away. Also, you can imagine lining all of these up is going to be a little tricky, but there's some spots back here, that whole angled thing I was telling you about. You could see how one was cut inward, one was cut outward, but in some instances that kind of added a cool effect, like it's kind of rounded out here, and that wasn't intentional. Also, you can see the sights, the middle sight here in the back, that's the rear sight, that came out pretty good. The front sight, it's just a little moundy, plus not having that piece there kind of makes this not that rigid. But once I put that end back, now you can see it's a lot better. Not bad right now. Not perfect, but not bad. Also, here's the scales. So they'll go like this. It's beginning to look a lot like a gun, as best as it's going to look. Again, we don't want to look too much like a gun. Now, he wants one silver and one black. He said he's going to do the silver one. This is going to be the black one. What I should do is get some rubber bands. I have a bunch of them here, and just kind of put this together as a mock-up. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do much more with this tonight because I got to take it out to the shed to do the sanding and the dremeling and whatnot, and it's kind of late here on a Sunday night. So I won't be able to do anything now with it, but tomorrow when I get up, since tomorrow is Memorial Day and I'm off of work luckily, I will be able to work on this. My wife unfortunately has to work, so I will be by myself with not much else better to do. But yeah, it's kind of ironic I'm working on a fake pistol on Memorial Day weekend here, but it's just the way it worked out. But anyway, yeah, this is the close to, I wouldn't say close to completion, close to being what we want it to look like, I guess. That actually kind of looks cool just like that on the viewfinder release, just the gray of the gun, you know, the actual foam with the purple and the orange at the end. I don't know, it definitely looks like a toy gun for sure when you look at it from the side. It's got some ugly points right now, but once it's, you know, cleaned up and sanded and whatnot, it's definitely gonna look a lot better. But with that, I'm gonna clean up here for the night. See you in the morning.